They told you that you were too sensitive, too emotional, too intense, that you cared too much, thought too deeply, or felt too strongly. But what they never understood was that your sensitivity wasn't a flaw. It was your power waiting to be understood. The Sigma Empath's awakening begins the moment they stop apologizing for their depth and start realizing that their emotions are not burdens, they're instruments of truth. This isn't a story about becoming tougher. It's about becoming aware. It's the journey of someone who finally stops trying to fit into a world that rewards indifference and instead embraces the quiet strength that comes from feeling everything and still choosing peace. You've spent years tuning into everyone's emotions but your own. Now it's time to listen inward. Because once a Sigma empath realizes they were never too sensitive, they were simply too aware, everything changes. If you've ever been made to feel like your sensitivity is a weakness, this video will remind you of your hidden power. You'll see why being sensitive in a world built on numbness is the ultimate act of strength. So before we begin, make sure you subscribe to Brainy Empath, where we turn emotional depth into your greatest form of power. Comment below, have you ever been told you're too sensitive, and did it make you doubt your strength or discover it? The conditioning to believe sensitivity is weakness. From the very beginning, the world teaches sensitive souls to tone themselves down. The Sigma empath grows up being told to toughen up, to stop crying, to stop feeling so much, as if emotions were a disease that needed to be cured. Every deep observation, every tear, every intuitive reaction gets labeled as overreacting. So they learn to internalize this message that sensitivity must mean fragility. They start to hide their empathy behind polite smiles and quiet compliance, trying to blend in with people who confuse apathy for strength. But deep inside, there's always a conflict, the pull between wanting to be accepted and knowing they were never meant to be numb. The conditioning runs deep. Society praises those who can detach, those who can grind through chaos without blinking, those who call it realism when they shut down their emotions. So the Sigma empath tries to imitate that. They mirror stoicism not because it feels right, but because it's safer. They start doubting their intuition, questioning whether their deep feelings are valid or simply signs of weakness. But in doing so, they silence the very voice that once protected them. Their emotions, which were designed to guide, now feel like a trap. Yet something begins to shift with time. The Sigma empath starts noticing that the people who mock their sensitivity are the ones most disconnected from themselves. They see that emotional numbness doesn't equal peace, it's just avoidance wearing armor. And suddenly, the illusion breaks. The empath realizes they've been conditioned to see their greatest strength as a flaw, to suppress the very energy that connects them to truth. It's in that awareness that their awakening begins. They stop apologizing for feeling deeply. They stop explaining why things affect them more than others. They begin to see their emotions not as storms, but as signals, guiding them toward authenticity. The Sigma empath finally understands that sensitivity isn't about breaking easily. It's about feeling fully and still standing tall. The world's conditioning fades, replaced by quiet self-acceptance, the first act of reclaiming their power. Because once they stop seeing their sensitivity as weakness, no one can use it against them again. The awakening, seeing emotion as inner intelligence. The Sigma empath's awakening begins the moment they realize that their emotions were never random storms, they were data. Every wave of feeling, every gut instinct, every unexplained heaviness was a coded message from their intuition. For years, they mistook it for overthinking, for sensitivity that made life harder. But now they begin to see what was hidden all along. Their emotions were not weaknesses to control, but intelligence to understand. It's the kind of wisdom that can't be taught in classrooms or learned through logic. It's the emotional compass that points straight toward truth when the world tries to confuse them. They start replaying the past through this new lens. Every time they felt something was off and ignored it to keep the peace, ended in betrayal or disappointment. Every I'm fine moment they accepted at face value despite sensing the lie was another lesson in trusting themselves. Now, the Sigma empath understands that emotion and intuition work together. One translates what the heart feels, the other interprets what the mind can't see. Together, they form a silent system of awareness that most people spend a lifetime running from. The awakening changes how they interact with the world. They stop analyzing everything through logic alone because they know logic without empathy is hollow. Instead, they start listening to the rhythm beneath the words, watching the energy behind the behavior, a fake smile, a shifted tone, a quick glance away. None of it goes unnoticed anymore. Their emotions become signals, not reactions, a quiet radar that reads energy like a map. But the real shift happens inside. They no longer fight their emotional nature. They no longer see their heart as a liability, but as a source of profound awareness. While others chase distractions to escape discomfort, the Sigma Empath leans in. They decode it. Because emotion, when understood, turns into wisdom. It's how they know who's genuine, what's real, and where their peace belongs. In this awakening, they stop apologizing for feeling deeply and start taking pride in seeing clearly. What once made them different now makes them powerful, because emotion, when mastered, becomes the most accurate form of intelligence there is. How society rewards numbness and dismisses depth. The Sigma Empath eventually sees the game, the way society worships numbness and calls it strength. People who feel less are labeled stable. Those who detach easily are praised for being rational, and those who can silence their emotions on command are promoted, followed, and admired. Meanwhile, the ones who think deeply, feel deeply, and care deeply are often dismissed as too much. The world glorifies surface-level confidence and emotional detachment while quietly punishing authenticity. It teaches people to hide their humanity in exchange for acceptance. The Sigma Empath watches this unfold from the sidelines, a world that celebrates those who can move on instantly, who ghost without guilt, who call empathy a weakness in a world built on manipulation. They notice how people are rewarded for pretending not to care, for acting indifferent even when they're hurting. Social media amplifies it, fake perfection over real connection, image over emotion. It's a culture that fears depth because depth demands honesty, and honesty threatens illusions. But while everyone else races to appear unbothered, the Sigma Empath starts realizing something powerful. Numbness isn't strength, it's self-abandonment disguised as control. The people society calls strong are often just disconnected. The ones who don't care are the ones who can't face themselves. The empath sees this contradiction clearly now. They understand that emotional depth takes far more courage than emotional avoidance. It's easy to stay numb. It's hard to stay open in a world that keeps breaking you. So they stop trying to fit in. They stop diluting their essence to make others comfortable. They stop playing the numbness game because they've seen where it leads: shallow relationships, fragile egos, and lives built on distraction. The Sigma Empath would rather feel deeply and heal honestly than pretend everything is fine. Their emotional depth becomes their quiet rebellion. While society rewards those who run from feeling, the Sigma Empath learns to master it, to feel fully, think clearly, and act deliberately. In a world that values control over connection, their ability to care without crumbling becomes their greatest power. And that's when they realize the world may dismiss depth, but depth will always outlast the shallow. The shift from absorbing pain to interpreting it. The Sigma Empath's true transformation begins when they stop being a sponge for the world's emotions and start becoming a translator of them. For most of their life, they carried pain that wasn't theirs, sadness that belonged to others, anger they didn't cause, guilt that was never their burden. They thought understanding people meant feeling their suffering. Every energy they encountered seeped into them like ink into water, and they called it empathy. But what they were really doing was losing themselves in other people's chaos. Then something inside shifts. One day, they feel the same emotional heaviness they've felt 1,000 times before, but instead of drowning in it, they observe it. They ask, "Is this mine?" That question becomes the beginning of emotional freedom. The Sigma Empath starts realizing that pain can be studied instead of absorbed, understood instead of carried. They stop confusing empathy with enmeshment. It's no longer about taking on other people's wounds. It's about reading them, decoding them, learning from them without letting them live inside. This new awareness feels like unlocking a superpower they didn't know they had. When someone projects anger, they no longer internalize it, they interpret it. When manipulation tries to guilt trip them, they no longer apologize, they recognize the pattern. It's the evolution from emotional reaction to emotional translation, and it changes everything. The empath's heart doesn't close, it becomes selective. They no longer mistake pain for connection. They understand that empathy doesn't mean drowning with others, it means guiding them to shore while keeping your own head above water. The Sigma Empath's energy shifts from absorber to analyzer. They still feel deeply, but with purpose, not passivity. Every emotion becomes information, not infiltration. Their sensitivity transforms into strategy, and with that, they stop being drained by the world and start navigating it with quiet mastery. The world notices the difference. People can no longer manipulate them through pity, guilt, or emotional storms because the empath now sees what they once felt. Pain no longer defines them, it informs them. This is the Sigma Empath's ascension. When empathy evolves from suffering to awareness, from absorption to interpretation, and from that moment on, nothing and no one can shake their peace again. Empathy as emotional foresight, not fragility. The Sigma Empath eventually learns that what others call fragility is actually foresight. Their ability to feel deeply was never about weakness, it was about awareness. They don't just feel emotions, they forecast them. Before a situation explodes, before someone shows their true face, before words turn into regret, they've already sensed it. Empathy for them isn't just an emotional trait, it's a form of intelligence that reads what logic can't detect. They see through tone shifts, energy drops, and subtle inconsistencies that others overlook. While most people react to life as it happens, the Sigma Empath predicts it before it does. They used to hate this part of themselves. Feeling everything so early made them seem paranoid or overly emotional. People told them they were imagining things, until those same people faced the consequences the empath had already sensed. But time teaches them to trust their foresight. That moment when their intuition and empathy merge becomes a defining one. It's when they stop apologizing for seeing what others refuse to acknowledge. Empathy, in its highest form, becomes the Sigma Empath's radar. It's how they avoid emotional traps, toxic cycles, and fake connections. They can walk into a room and feel who's pretending, who's hiding pain, who's quietly plotting. It's not magic, it's perception sharpened by pain and shaped by awareness. They start realizing that emotional foresight allows them to lead with wisdom instead of reaction. It saves time, energy, and heartbreak. But it also isolates them because being ahead emotionally means often standing alone. They can't unsee what's coming, and pretending ignorance feels like self-betrayal. So they make peace with being misunderstood. They'd rather be right in silence than accepted in delusion. What others see as emotional fragility is in truth emotional precision. The Sigma Empath's foresight allows them to move with calm even when storms are brewing, to detach without bitterness, and to act without fear. Their emotions don't make them unstable, they make them strategic. And once they embrace that, empathy stops being a wound and becomes their most reliable form of guidance. Because in a world that runs from emotion, the Sigma Empath uses it to see the truth before it arrives. And that's what makes them unstoppable. The power of feeling deeply but reacting wisely. The Sigma Empath's strength doesn't lie in avoiding emotion, it lies in mastering it. They still feel everything, often more intensely than anyone around them, but the difference is in how they respond. Where they once reacted instantly to every surge of energy, every subtle shift in tone, every ounce of pain in someone else's eyes, they now pause. They've learned that emotion is data, and reacting too fast means losing control of that information. So instead of being pulled by the current, they study the flow. They've discovered the rare balance of feeling deeply but responding wisely. It's not numbness, it's refinement. The Sigma Empath doesn't suppress emotions, they filter them. They let themselves experience anger, sadness, disappointment, but they don't let those emotions dictate their next move. They breathe through them, analyze them, and then decide if the situation deserves a reaction or just silence. This emotional discipline becomes their hidden power, the kind that intimidates manipulators and confuses those used to controlling others through chaos. They understand that not every battle deserves a voice. Sometimes the most powerful statement is restraint, choosing when to speak, when to walk away, and when to let time deliver justice. This level of awareness takes years of emotional endurance, trial, and self-reflection. They had to be broken by their own sensitivity before they could learn how to control it, but once they did, they became unshakable. People used to call them too emotional, but now that same depth makes them impossible to manipulate. They've turned their empathy into strategy. They can listen to anger without matching it, witness betrayal without losing their composure, and walk away from drama with peace instead of pain. Their emotions no longer rule them, they serve them. Feeling deeply but reacting wisely gives the Sigma Empath a quiet power that few understand. It allows them to connect without collapsing, to love without losing themselves, and to see truth without needing to shout it. It's the mark of emotional evolution, where depth meets discernment. In a world that either overreacts or underfeels, the Sigma Empath has mastered the art of balance, the kind of power that doesn't need to be loud to be legendary, turning sensitivity into selective awareness. Sensitivity, once the Sigma Empath's greatest burden, becomes their sharpest weapon when they learn how to use it selectively. In the past, every emotion in the room felt like an invasion. Every sigh, every tone shift, every unspoken disappointment landed in their body like static. They felt too much. Every joy, every sorrow, every tension, all at once. It was exhausting, like carrying invisible storms that weren't even theirs. But maturity brings refinement. The Sigma Empath realizes that sensitivity doesn't have to mean exposure, it can mean precision. They begin to filter what deserves their emotional bandwidth and what doesn't. Instead of absorbing every energy that passes by, they scan it, analyze it, and decide whether to let it in. That's the evolution, awareness without attachment. Sensitivity no longer means vulnerability, it means data. They can sense someone's motives, intentions, and emotional state in seconds. But now they use that knowledge strategically. They no longer rush to comfort everyone who's hurting. They no longer chase harmony where truth doesn't live. They conserve empathy like energy, spending it only where it returns growth, not chaos. This selective awareness transforms their presence. People still feel their depth, but it's grounded now, steady, discerning, almost untouchable. They're no longer overwhelmed by emotions. They orchestrate them. When a manipulator tries to provoke, the Sigma Empath simply observes, detached yet deeply aware. When someone genuine needs connection, they open their energy fully, warm, present, and real. It's this balance that turns them into emotional alchemists, transforming what once drained them into what now empowers them. The world doesn't understand this shift at first. People used to the empath's constant giving now feel their calm distance and call it coldness. But it's not cold, it's clarity. The Sigma Empath has learned that real peace doesn't come from shutting down emotion, it comes from mastering it. Their sensitivity becomes a radar tuned only to truth, purpose, and authenticity. And that's when everything changes. Relationships become cleaner, energy flows smoother, and peace stops feeling like isolation. The Sigma Empath no longer feels too sensitive. They simply feel selectively alive. They've turned their once chaotic heart into a finely tuned compass, one that points only toward what's real. The realization, sensitivity was always a superpower, never a flaw. For the Sigma Empath, this is the moment everything clicks, the moment they finally understand that what they were taught to hide was, in fact, their greatest weapon. Sensitivity wasn't their curse, it was their compass. Every emotion they'd ever felt too deeply, every heartbreak that lingered too long, every sleepless night replaying words and energies, it was all training. Their sensitivity wasn't a weakness to fix. It was emotional X-ray vision in a world that thrives on masks. For years, they tried to tone it down, to toughen up, to be more like the people who seemed unaffected. But every time they tried to be less, the world around them grew colder and emptier. That's when they realized the very thing that made them different also made them real. Their sensitivity was the reason they noticed the lies others missed, the reason they could comfort someone without words, the reason they could transform pain into wisdom. It wasn't fragility, it was awareness sharpened by depth. The Sigma Empath learns that the world often mistakes sensitivity for softness because it fears anything that can't be controlled. But what they possess isn't softness, it's strength disguised as gentleness. They can walk through chaos without losing compassion, sense deception without needing proof, and feel someone suffering without letting it destroy them. That's not fragility, that's mastery. Now, instead of suppressing what they feel, they refine it. Their emotions become data. Their intuition becomes navigation. Their heart becomes strategy. They no longer seek validation for their depth, they own it. They stop apologizing for their empathy and start wielding it like an art form. They learn that the calmest person in the room is usually the one who's already felt everything and survived it. Sensitivity, they realize, is power with awareness. It's the ability to connect, to discern, to lead quietly but effectively. The Sigma Empath stops being ashamed of their emotions and starts using them as tools of understanding and growth. And as they rise, they finally see the truth. They were never too sensitive. The world was simply too numb to meet them where they were. And that realization, that their depth was never a defect, becomes the moment they stepped fully into their power. When you reach the stage where your empathy no longer drains you but guides you, you've stepped into your Sigma Empath era. Calm, discerning, and untouchable. You no longer chase understanding, you embody it. You don't absorb chaos, you translate it. And that shift from feeling too much to feeling wisely is what makes you powerful in a world that confuses numbness with strength. If this message resonates with you, remember, your sensitivity isn't your weakness, it's your compass. It's the reason you can see through masks and move through life with silent precision. You are never too sensitive, you are simply tuned in to a frequency most people can't handle. If you've ever felt misunderstood or like your depth was too much for this world, you're exactly who this channel is for. Subscribe to Brainy Empath and join a space where emotional intelligence meets strength, where we turn awareness into power and compassion into clarity. Now tell me in the comments, have you ever been made to feel too sensitive, only to later realize it was actually your gift? Your story might help someone see their own light.